Sandy Springs Code of Ordinances. Chief Sanders, you're on tonight, and we might need a controlled fire up here, so stand by.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you tonight is a request that would like to bring forward to you concerning fees that we want to implement in the fire department. How does this? There you go. It's not moving. I'm sorry. Uh-oh. So a couple of items situations that we've run into over the years that's really put a real strain on the fire department is responding to calls at facilities where someone is needing to, it's not an emergency call where the individual is in the floor and needs assistance to get back into the bed. And at these assisted living facilities, the owners of the companies refuse to allow the employees that work there to assist these residents. And we have realized on the fire side that we run about anywhere from 50 to 70 calls a year for this type of calls for service. When our apparatus gets on the scene, we have a minimum of 3 people on that truck. And when our apparatus gets on the scene, we're there anywhere from 30 minutes up to an hour in helping that individual get back in their bed or whatever the need may be. And we've spoken many times to the businesses that house these residents. And their policy is, most of their policies are that it's too much of a liability for them to assume that responsibility, and they just rely on us. When they do this, when they do call 911 and ask for this assistance, they get an engine that responds, or a ladder truck if our other trucks are in service or on another call out of service. They respond to these incidences, and it also at times requires an ambulance to respond as well. We cancel the ambulance out, and then our employees help them, assist them, getting them back into the bed or into the chair. And what we want to do, other agencies have begun to implement a fee for this, and we've recognized that we need to implement this same fee structure. It would be $225 for a half hour per fire personnel. It'd be if we had 3 or more calls within a 30-day period, it would go up to $300 for a half hour per fire personnel, and then the $450 would be 5 or more calls within 30 days. We have discussed this with several of the businesses that we were contemplating on recommending a fee structure to address this. They realize the situation that we're in. We did have one of the facilities, they were unaware that their employee was not assisting, and they said they would better communicate that, but they did understand that we had to cover our cost of what it's been costing us to provide this type of service. Another area that we've seen that we need to address is a fire watch. And what happens here is, if you recall, last year during the inclement weather when we had dozens and dozens of apartment units that had flooded because of bursted water pipes, when the sprinkler systems are not working, the company is supposed to do what's called a fire watch. They're supposed to have someone there watching the buildings 24 hours a day in case one were to catch fire. And they're supposed to keep a log when they log the time with these employees overseeing this fire watch. But what we've discovered is they're not accountable there. And we've discovered that oftentimes the people are not in place to provide the fire watch. And if we have to be put in that situation moving forward, we feel that we need to be compensated for that time when we have to assign an employee there, an individual there out of the fire marshal's office, or someone there that we're paying overtime during that time until the sprinkler systems are back in service. Another area that we've seen that we need to provide, have a fee structure for is what's called a fire apparatus standby. And so oftentimes we have large-scale accidents on 285 or 400, which requires what's known as a trip activation. That's when the state has contracts with large wrecker services, large cleanup services, that they come out and they have to clear the roadways within a certain amount of time. Well, during that time, we stage a large apparatus out on the road just to keep the scene safe. So it is standing by out there for upwards to 1 to 2 hours at times. And there's in most of the commercial insurance policies that these fleets have, there's an opportunity there to recover that cost through billing that insurance company. And we would like to have this this fee structure set up to where we could receive some compensation back for the cost of services that we're providing out there. Also, the hazardous material cleanup, there's also opportunity to recover costs there through insurance companies that we are not benefiting from that at this time. And then the special services, there is times where we, through our apartment ordinances, where they're supposed to have a certified building inspector to go out and to inspect hydrants, and also inspect the units. At times we've seen that where they have not done that or not unable to do that, and we need some type of structure there to compensate, reimburse us for those services as well. So we've recommending these, and if you have any questions about them, I'd be glad to answer them for you.
All right, you've heard the report of the fire chief. Any questions? Mr. DiGiulio.
Chief, the one I was noticing, go back one slide here. Yeah, it was the fire watch on there, because I know over the years when I've lived in apartment complexes, some of them are so big that you need multiple people. Do we have any ordinances that require these apartment complexes to have fire watch people, and how many they need? Because in some of these things you'd need probably 3 or 4, but if it was my apartment complex, I'd probably put 1 there because of the cost. Do we have any ordinances that cover that?
I will. Let me see where that documentation's at, and then I will provide that for you before before February the 6th, the next session.
Chief, if I could inject, what we generally do, Councilman, is that it's part of a sentence, or in lieu of a fine, if there's a citation that's been written for failing or improperly installed or improperly operating sprinkler system, as part of the plea arrangement, they're required to have a fire watch that is suitable to the chief's fire inspectors. So they determine if 1's enough, they need 2, and it's always 24 hours, and they have to provide the log that Chief Sanders mentioned a minute ago.
So it's a judgment on the part of the fire marshal.
Fire inspector.
The fire inspector.
Ms. Rochelle.
So I have a couple questions, and this pertains to the lift assist.
Mm-hmm.
So, who would get billed? Would it be the assisted living place or the individual? And is it per person or per facility that you're talking about 2 or 3 times? And then the last one is, so Mount Vernon Towers, for instance, I know you've been over there because I talked to Rita a few times last week, but they're not assisted living. So how would that?
We would not bill them.
You wouldn't bill
If
them.
there are independent individuals in the facility that call for assistance, we will not ever bill the individuals.
Okay.
This will only be the facilities that have this policy in place that they will not assist their residents in a non-emergency environment or event, and just assisting them to get up. And then we will charge or bill that facility, the management there, not the individual.
All right, thanks.
Mr. Paulson.
Thanks, Chief. Just to reiterate, this doesn't apply to homeowners,
No, sir.
doesn't apply to individuals in independent living facilities.
No, sir.
How many facilities are there that you guys respond to in the city?
There's less than 10 facilities that we respond to. We have 2 facilities where we have the biggest issue with.
And when you talk to them about this, a lot of them are assisted living, but the assisted living doesn't apply to assisting somebody to get back in the bed?
No, sir.
It's a little strange to me that they don't do this, but okay. But you've talked to them, and
Yes.
they understand what's coming.
Patrick went out 2 weeks ago to each one of the facilities, spoke with their management. During that conversation, as I said earlier, we did learn that they were not aware. They were unaware that their team was not assisting, and so they were going to better communicate that. But even that facility understood that we are taking units out of service that are unable to respond to emergency calls to provide this non-emergency assistance that we need to be compensated for, and they did understand that.
Mr. Lee.
When the chief came up with this idea some time ago, and his staff has been researching it, we did the same thing in the legal side of it. And the first thought that crossed my mind, and I'm reading your mind, Councilman Paulson, is that if you're in the business of looking after old folks, falling down is part of being an old folk. I heard that. I don't know personally, but I heard it. And so it begged the question.
I can confirm that.
That's part of my research. It begged the question, why? How could this happen? And it appears that some of these places that are in the business, and this ordinance would be fashioned not to apply to the individuals, but to these entities, these operations, where the reason they don't do it, it appears, is that they don't keep the right licensed people that can put their hands on the patient, so that insurance won't allow them to do it. They've got to call our experts, our licensed people, to come over there. Whereas they would have, all the fees that are requested up here are paid, every category, including this one, are paid to the private sector to do that which the people of Sandy Springs Fire Department is being asked to do for free. And this is part of that group. They're not getting paid because they're not licensing the right folks to be there.
Mr. Bauman.
John, are you done? So it sounds like the goal of this is to change the behavior, right? I mean, and this is not. My mother lives in assisted living. I mean, this is almost to the nature of a fine, but we're not calling it a fine. You can respond to that or not. I'm just thinking about. We have to do this. I get it. I mean, but they're trying to shift the liability is what they're trying to do, which is, well, if somebody is liable in every situation, they're shifting it. I mean, they may decide that this is a good, valuable, but we take that responsibility every day, right? I mean, we take, or do we have different protections of liability as first responders than private service givers might have?
To some degree, they do, but the Sandy Springs Fire Department is well-staffed, EMTs and the like, who are licensed for this kind of activity. And it appears, in my opinion, that some of these assisted care facilities have night watch persons and not EMTs and the folks that have the proper license that could carry out this process.
Does that result in a violation of something that the city has enforcement authority over, or something that we can report to a body that does, like a state licensure commission or something?
All these facilities are licensed, but they're outside the purview of the city.
But when we discover it, do we not have a right to report that in? I mean,
You could report anybody.
Well, the state has certain staffing requirements for nursing homes and assisted living facilities. It focuses more on the number of people you've got to have, not necessarily the quality of their training sometimes.
To the point that's been made is somebody falls and
Right.
they can't pick them up. I mean, that's the scandal here.
Right. The state passed about 3-4 years ago certain staffing requirements because a lot of facilities were understaffed and these sorts of things were happening. But again, it focuses more on the number of people that you have on staff, not necessarily all of their qualifications. So you would assume that they're hiring qualified people to do certain things, but
And just come back to us with habitual
Yeah.
violators so that, the public should know that at some point, but.
I will say this, that Cobb County implemented similar ordinance a while back, and their call volume has not changed. And the response they got from the facilities was they don't have a problem paying it. They don't want the liability.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a response that I got from their fire chief.
any further conversation? Dr. Kelly.
Chief, can you give us an idea of how these, how you all came up with the numbers, the 225,
What we did was we took, we actually took the overall budget of the fire department and divided it by the number of total calls that we respond to annually, which was in excess of 10,000 calls. That's how we come up with that factor. And then some of the other, fees, we utilize the FEMA. FEMA has a price guideline that you can utilize to charge. And we use that fee structure as well.
okay. So it looks like the cost per call, for example, for 2023 was around $1,446. So then I guess the 225 or the numbers on your fee schedule are based on that.
That's
a
correct.
fraction of that somehow.
The 225 was per firefighter. So there'd be a minimum of 3 firefighters that will be always on the apparatus when it responds there.
Okay. Do we have an idea of the number of hours, for example, in 2023 that we had fire personnel doing fire watch?
We have no record of any of our firefighters as of today doing the fire watches. What we have discovered since I've been here is that we have accountability issues in the apartment complexes, falsifying logs and not actually being there on the fire watch. The unprecedented cold weather when we had all the water line ruptures this past year was when we really saw that we had an issue. And that's the reason why we've come before you, that we need to identify it. We're about to go through a lot of cold weather here, and we'll have more of the same issue when we want to be able to address that by putting our people out there, because we have so many, apartment buildings. We need to make sure they are being watched.
Do we have any numbers on the fire apparatus standby, like how many hours?
No, I could pull that for you and get that for you, a number there.
Okay. I'm complete. Thank you.
All right, any further? All right, Chief, there's no action tonight. This is for information. We'll be voting on this in February.
Yes.
So just wanted to give you the information. Next item is medical response unit purchase for the Sandy Springs Fire Department, again by Chief Sanders.
Okay, so as you know, we have a contract with American Medical Response, AMR Ambulance Service, and we've been under a contract with the ambulance service since 2009, but under the current contract for the last 4.5 years. And it expires, the current contract expires in June 2024 of this year. And under the agreement, they provide 8 ambulances at peak time, 4 ambulances 24 hours a day. And what we've done is we buy down a response time of 7 minutes and 59 seconds. The state does not have a minimum response time for emergency for ambulances statewide. There's just not a time. And if you want that time, because all the ambulance services are provided by private owners, you have to buy down that time, and we here in Sandy Springs have done that. Under the current contract, we pay $260,000 a year with no escalator for the last 4 years. And the problem we have run into is that because of the reimbursement rate reduction towards the ambulance services for the billable rates, they're only receiving now about $400 to $500 reimbursement from a $1,700. Our minimum fee is $1,725 for an ALS call. They're only getting back about $400 to between $400 and $500 on the reimbursement rate, and they can't continue to provide that level of service for that $260,000. When the city manager and I began to negotiate with AMR, they came back to us for the same level of service that we're talking about. They quoted us at 850% increase in the subsidy, which would be about $3.6 million. Absolutely unsustainable, and we really needed to come up with a better solution to be able to come to you with a proposal. So what we have done is looking at all of our calls, looking at the challenges. The challenges are there's a decrease in the reimbursement levels, and that is a nationwide challenge. So what AMR has done is they are really putting together legislation to recommend to states to approve, to pass legislation that will help address the private insurance companies with the reimbursement rates. They've done that in a few of the states nationwide. Texas is one, California, there's a couple of up north, and they've already started lobbying for local legislation here in Georgia. The other issue is the labor issues. Post-pandemic, the cost increase to have a paramedic. Same challenges we face with the paramedics on the fire side but it's much worse on the private sector side and putting them in the ambulance. The costs have really increased. The inability to provide competitive wages and recruit and retain the staff. And then also the other challenge that is placed on the ambulance service is the hospital delays. Since the pandemic, they've created what is called wall time. There's not enough beds for the patients that are coming into the emergency room. It is still a problem today. You will have what we call wall time, where the ambulance will get there with a patient, and they may stay up to an hour to 2 hours on the wall waiting for that patient to get to a bed or get turned over to a nurse. That takes that ambulance out of the response system, which further challenges us getting them on the scene in an appropriate amount of time. So some of the things that we have done, and as I shared with you a couple of weeks ago, we've realized and we've looked at this and said we've got to address this in multiple ways. One of the ways is, as I shared with you, we're going to present in this upcoming 2025 budget is a paramedicine program, a community paramedicine program, to where we will actually have someone, if approved, assigned that will be working a 40-hour work week, going to these assisted living facilities or the facilities like Mount Vernon Towers, speaking with the owners and the residents there, teaching them to not call 911 every time if it's not a real emergency, but work with them in addressing their medical situation one-on-one versus straining the 911 system for calls that should have been a non-emergency conversation versus an ambulance getting on the scene. And so we're going to go through that process. We feel that we can remove up to 3,000 calls over 24 months. We believe that we can remove up to 3,000 calls out of the 911 system and reduce that burden on the ambulance. So that's that's one approach that we're doing. The other thing that we're going to do is work with the North Fulton cities. We were the only city of the 5 cities that actually had a response time of 8 minutes and 59 seconds. Looking at all of our data historically, we've seen that we don't have to have an ambulance on the scene in 8 minutes we really don't need them there within 10 minutes because we've got paramedics on our trucks that are getting there within 8 minutes, stabilizing the patient, and we can really look at the ambulance getting there within 10 to 12 minutes and still be fine in getting them to the hospital because we've got the drugs that we need on our trucks. We've got the intervention that we need on the trucks, and we have the professionals that are responding to these scenes via fire truck or the ambulance. If it does get there, that they've got the people and the equipment, but we also have that on our apparatus. And what we are proposing to do is to work with the North Fulton cities, coming up with a regional approach with this, with the ambulance response time and going from the 8 minutes up to a 12-minute response time for the ambulance. The fire truck, the fire personnel will still get on the scene within the appropriate amount of time, within that 8 minutes, being able to stabilize a patient, have the drug and the interventions that they need in the truck to be able to give to those patients to stabilize them until the ambulance does get on the scene. By doing this and also the paramedicine program, we believe that's going to help relieve the burden of the ambulance. It'll also reduce the amount of subsidy that we will have to pay because now all 5 cities are going to agree to that some form of a subsidy. And we'll be able to bring that before you in the 2025 budget. The other thing that we want to do is to purchase a transport-capable unit. This unit would be, if approved, would be put in place at Station 2, that is our busiest house. Instead of sending a ladder truck or an engine to these emergency calls, we will send this unit. Will be staffed with a paramedic and an EMT advanced. And these individuals get on the scene, and we will only transport should they get on the scene and the ambulance is delayed and they need to make that transport quicker than the 12 minutes. We would have that ambulance there, this unit, available to respond. We do believe that this is something that we are one of 2 cities in North Fulton that does not have a transport unit. Us and Alpharetta are the only 2 cities that do not have transport type units. We would like to start with one of these. We believe that this is going to relieve the burden of mileage on our apparatus here at Station 2. And, if we see the success of this program, we may add another one of these units in the next 2 to 3 years. This area here, Station 2's territory and Station 1's territory, are our 2 busiest houses or fire stations with our EMS calls. They're the busiest ones that we have. And we'd like to start with this one unit. It takes 10 to 12 months for it to be built. And that's why we're coming to you here tonight. We do have, we can purchase this with impact fees. We have impact fees up to, I believe, 200 and something thousand. And then we've got funds in our fire fleet budget that we could pull to make up the difference of the $390,000. And if you're, I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have about the unit, but we do need to get it ordered as soon as possible in order to get it in service early 2025.
Just so council knows the posture we're in, we will not take action on this tonight.
No.
The next one, this will be for information so that you can ask questions. We'll vote at the next council meeting whether to purchase this. So are there any questions? Mr. DiGiulio.
Chief, excuse me. Chief, as you know, unfortunately, I have used these services a couple of times in the last year, and I've always wondered why an ambulance comes followed by a truck. Mm-hmm. And why do we need an ambulance there, take it out of service, have these guys sitting there when we already have an ambulance there? Why do we do both?
The reason why we do both is oftentimes our truck gets on the scene before the ambulance. And we never know when we go anywhere from a level 4 to 6 ambulances down to level 2 to level 1 to level 0 where we have no ambulances in the city. And, each day, like today, I mean, we've gone to level 0, I know once today, and we stayed at level 2 probably, 4 to 6 hours today because we had so many calls going on. But, all of our units, when I got here, all of our units were not ALS, Advanced Life Support. Now today, all of our engines and our ladder trucks have ALS capabilities, Advanced Life Support capabilities. Every unit is capable of responding. There's often times where we have 5 to 6 EMS calls going on at the same time. That's daily. Yes, sir. And and then the challenge we run into is, like I said, that ambulance may be at the hospital, but it's out of service waiting for someone to take that patient. So that ambulance is sitting there out of service. So we respond to that. We always respond an engine. We are structured to have what's called Alpha Bravo Charlie Delta Echo calls. It's called emergency medical dispatching that takes place. And we don't even send a fire truck now on Alpha calls. The ambulance goes, but the fire truck doesn't. That is really a non-emergency call. And what we're trying to do is just fine-tune that emergency medical dispatching to where we're truly eliminating where the fire truck only responds on the Charlie Delta Echo calls. These are the more life-threatening calls. And so we can reduce the mileage and the wear and tear on those apparatus. In your situation, oftentimes, I'd say half the time when the ambulance gets on the scene, they need assistance either lifting, getting the patient down the stairs. If they have to use a stair chair, it takes 4 people to do that. And I always try to get people to think in pairs of hands. If you've ever been to the hospital, you've got 4 or 5, nurses around. Well, these guys are trained just as those nurses are. They're those pairs of hands. It takes 6 to 8 people to work a cardiac arrest. We may be on that scene from 20 to 30 minutes. And we're trained to do that because we have everything the hospital has. We're trained to get that return of the spontaneous circulation, get that heart beating again. And that's what our protocol is, and that's what we're trained to do. That's why they stay on the scene of a cardiac arrest, because they need to stabilize the patient. They're going to get them to recover. They've got to do it when they get on the scene. And our guys are set up and trained to that level to be able to do that, and constantly in contact with the doctor at the ER as well.
You guys do an excellent job.
Thank you.
Mr. Baumann?
So, Chief, I hope we can rewind that videotape of the last 2 or 3 minutes and share that with everybody in the city, because I sat here in rapt attention, and that is really reassuring hearing you to speak. I mean, that was a remarkable display of knowledge and command of the information, so thank you for that. I am sitting here listening to discussions of data, and maybe just sort of rhetorically, so I don't forget, Eden, maybe at the retreat, want to ask about how we are mining data and, all the talk of AI to continue to develop best practices. But, Chief, thank you for that, those comments. And that's just more of a rhetorical question for later on the use of AI.
Ms. Rochelle?
I have a question. So between June 30th, 2024, when the contract expires and when we get this new truck, what are we doing in the meantime?
In the meantime, we will continue to respond, and we just won't have that capability to transport should we have that need. It's just you never know. We know we're going to extend the time here, and but we will. We have no. I could say today that I have no data to show that ambulance getting on the scene within 8 minutes made any difference in the patient's outcome. I can show that since the inception of this city. When our guys get on the scene, if we don't have bystanders doing CPR, they're not going to revive. And, but that's why we spend so much time in training our citizens and our businesses that in CPR, so that we get that started the moment they go down. It starts in that home. It starts in that business. That way, when our guys get on the scene, their chances of reviving that patient tremendously improves.
I also wanted to say too that the ambulance we've had them at my house in the last year twice too, and just I felt so good when they came in and they knew, and your people too, our officers, just great job, and I know everybody feels really safe and comforted by knowing that y'all are here. So thank you.
And I would like to say this about the vehicles. Been here 9.5 years now, a little over 9 years, and when I first got here, a fire truck, an engine was running about $700,000. Today, they're $1.2 million. A ladder truck, an aerial, was running $1 million. Today, they're $2.2 million. When I got here, we were replacing apparatus between 4 and 6 years. Through our new fleet program and through designing smaller apparatus, efficiently powered, we've now extended our engines to 10 years replacement and our aerials 12 to 15 years. Our goal is to maintain that 10 to 12 to 15 because I believe that that's sustainable, but we have to change our behavior. Stop sending large apparatus on things that we don't need. As I shared with you a couple of weeks ago, the shocking number is this. That ambulance may respond emergency to the Bravo Delta Charlie Echo calls. Only 6% of those calls respond from the scene back to the hospital with emergency lights and sirens. Think about that. Out of 100 calls that they responded emergency to the scene, only 6 of those calls did they actually respond back to the hospital with lights and siren. We've got to change our behavior. And we're working on doing that. And we are going to do that in Sandy Springs.
Mr. Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief. As always, we have a top-notch first responder group, police and fire, and this fire department knows what they're doing. And I appreciate the fact that and I'm trying to figure out how to describe this, you're tailoring the responses that we need to the particulars of the event. And the more we can tailor this so we send no more, no less than what is needed, both personnel and equipment, then that's obviously a great goal, and I think that's fantastic. Are you talking to our 911 folks to make sure that they're asking and I'm sure you are, the right questions so that everybody's got a pretty good idea of what they're getting into when you start dispatching people out there? And is this part of this coordination, is talking to the 911 folks so that they can better quantify what you guys are facing?
Yes, sir. They have to be what's called EMD certified. The Chatcom IXP, it is an accredited center which has been certified through the Emergency Medical Dispatch Association, and they have to meet certain benchmarks to maintain that accreditation.
And this is consistent with what you're trying to do here.
That is correct.
You're asking the right questions. Okay. And then number 2, I think you might have touched on this. We're talking about spending almost $400,000 for this piece of equipment. The return on investment is in less use of the bigger equipment, or is that a fair way of describing it? Tell me more about that.
Yes, sir. As I shared with you, this is our busiest fire station, responds approximately 4,000 to 5,000 calls a year just out of Station 2. Right now today, an engine and a ladder goes on these EMS calls. This unit would take the place of those 2 units responding on the EMS calls. That's a huge return, and that's where we would see the advantage.
All right, fantastic. All right, thank you. Sounds great. Let's stay after it.
Ms. Mueller.
Chief, just a question on the staff. Will we be? Do you have to increase staff for this, or is this from our existing pool? Because you said that this will come to us for a budget as part of your budget. So will we also be looking to increase staff and. So
there's 2 options that we want to present to you. One is the option would be to staff it, which would require 6 personnel, or we've looked at our data, and we're also waiting on our ISO review to come back. We should be getting it back any day. But, we show in our data that right now we have 3 ladder trucks that are in service in the city today. And our data shows us that we could maintain our current ISO rating and our response times by having 2 aerials and decommissioning one of those aerials and restructuring our organization, our response, to where we put those personnel on these units, on this unit. And so that is the recommendation that I'm probably going to make in next year's budget, that we look at it. But I need to wait till our ISO review gets back. I feel confident in what I'm sharing with you, but I want my data to match with that.
And I just want to say thank you for you have a lot of statistics and you're really working it for the benefit of the residents in the city. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any further? All right, Chief, thank you. That'll end our work session. I'd like to call the meeting, this meeting of the Sandy Springs City Council to order for Tuesday, January 16th, 2024. Will the city clerk please make the general announcements and call the roll?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. First, I would like to remind those in attendance to please silence all cell phones and other electronic devices at this time. Individuals who would like to provide a public comment card at a city council meeting are required to complete and submit a public comment card in advance of the meeting. Public comment cards are available at the chamber entrance. Those providing public comment may be allotted up to 3 minutes to speak on their single chosen topic. As I call roll, please confirm your attendance. Mayor Rusty Paul.
Present.
Councilmember John Paulson. Councilmember Melody Kelly. Councilmember Melissa Mueller.
Present.
Councilmember Jody Rochelle. Councilmember Tibby DiGiulio. Councilmember Andy Bauman.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, have we received any public comment cards?
We have not.
All right, we'll close the public comment period. Is there a motion to approve the meeting agenda?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. DiGiulio.
I move approval of the meeting agenda for Tuesday, January 16th, 2024.
We have a motion by Mr. DiGiulio. Is there a second? Been moved by Mr. DiGiulio, seconded by Ms. Rochelle, that we approve the meeting agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on approval of the meeting agenda. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The meeting agenda is approved. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mayor Plow.
Ms.
I
Rochelle.
move that we approve the consent agenda for Tuesday, January 16th, 2024.
We have a motion by Ms. Rochelle. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved by Ms. Rochelle, seconded by Ms. Mueller, that we approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question is on the approval of the consent agenda. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The consent agenda is approved. Moving to public hearings, clerk will please read the first item.
I'd like to begin by acquainting folks with the rules of the hearing for this portion of the public hearings. The applicant and all those speaking in support of an application will be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present the application. The applicant may choose to save some of that time for rebuttal following the application by the opposition. The opposition will be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present its position. Since the burden of proof is upon the applicant will be allowed to make closing remarks provided time remains from the original allotted time. City staff will keep track of the time for both sides. Those called to speak will be taken in the order in which public comment cards were received by the city clerk staff prior to the beginning of tonight's meetings. We ask that all speakers identify themselves by name, address, and organization, if applicable, before beginning their presentation. A reminder that any demonstration of any sort within the chamber is prohibited, so please refrain from any outburst. Finally, materials should not be submitted to the council during the meeting unless you're requested to do so. This is item number 2024-013. That's U23-0003. 5920 Mount Vernon Highway, request for the mayor and city council consideration of a conditional use permit to allow for improvements to an existing place of worship in RE2 zoning district. Again, at 5920 Mount Vernon Highway, presented by Planning and Zoning Manager Michelle McIntosh Ross.
Ms. McIntosh Ross.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. This case is a conditional use permit U23-0003 for the Mystic Creek Community Church at 590 Mount Vernon Highway. Staff recommended approval with conditions, and the Planning Commission recommended approval with staff's conditions. This request is for conditional use permit to allow for this site, for site improvements at the existing place of worship at 590 Mount Vernon Highway. This site is zoned residential estate, that's RE, 2 acres, in the protected neighborhood character area. The aerial on the far right shows the campus is located on the northwest corner of Mount Vernon Highway and Glenridge Drive. And the site borders the Mount Vernon School on the north and the west. Across the streets on the southeast corner is the Regency Glen subdivision, and on the southwest corner is the Glenview subdivision, and those are RD 7.5 zoning. East across Glenridge Drive is the First Baptist Church of Sandy Springs. The existing development includes a cemetery, a church, and a general purpose building, all on 3.39 acres. Okay. All right. The proposed site improvements include a 2,000 square foot open air pavilion with a fireplace, a 2,000 square foot fenced playground. They're also proposing ADA ramps, retaining walls, and a water feature. Oh no, I went too far. Okay. So staff was in support of this application after considering that this proposal would be compatible with the existing principal use. The site improvements would create a quasi-public amenity. The use standards are being adhered to, and this would provide an enhancement of the public space and establishes a sense of place in the neighborhood. The potential adverse impacts are not anticipated. So following the review and based on the findings, staff recommends approval of the conditional use permit U23-0003 to allow for improvements to an existing place of worship in the RE zoning district at 590 Mount Vernon Highway, subject to the following conditions. That the applicants improve and replace the cemetery fencing parallel to Mount Vernon Highway by constructing new fencing per regulations as set forth in Section 8310 of the Development Code, and that the development of the site be done per the site plan provided as an integral part of this application. So staff recommends approval.
All right. Have we received any public comment cards?
Yes, we received one in support of the application.
All right.
Bradley Dunkett.
Mr. Dunkett.
Good evening, Mayor Paul, council members. I'm Bradley Dunkel, Rochester & Associates, 425 Oak Street, Gainesville, Georgia, representing the Misty Creek Community Church in their request for this conditional use permit. I believe Ms. McIntosh Ross made a comprehensive description of the request, and I do have tonight with me some members of the leadership team from the church, as well as Pastor Street and the project architect, if you have any questions of them. But these are improvements and enhancements to the existing campus of the church, and greatly needed to continue to grow the church and provide adequate facilities for their mission and for worship. So we respectfully would request your consideration and approval of this application and conditional use permit tonight.
You reserve the balance of your time for rebuttal, necessary?
I will reserve the balance for rebuttal. Yes, sir.
Let me turn my microphone on. I was just sitting there talking to myself, which is not unusual. You've heard the report of the planning and zoning manager. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Ms. Rochelle.
I'll move that we approve agenda item 2024-013, consideration of a conditional use permit to allow for improvements to an existing place of worship in RE2 zoning district at 5920 Mount Vernon Highway with the recommended conditions of the staff and the planning commission.
All right, you have a motion by Ms. Rochelle. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Rochelle, seconded by Ms. Mueller, that we approve agenda item 2024-013 a conditional use permit to allow for improvements to an existing place of worship in the RE2 zoning district. Any discussion? Ms. Rochelle.
So I wanted to ask someone from the staff, I guess, what are you planning on doing with the fireplace out there? And what is the use for the structure? What are you planning on doing with it?
Thank you. For the structure will be used for a gathering area, before services, after services, any type of fellowship gathering that may occur. There may be a youth group that meets there. Obviously, I think they'd like to use it for instance for Easter sunrise services. It's just kind of a multi-use additional space that creates an outdoor environment for the church and the membership. The fireplace is just I think a ambiance architectural feature. I mean, I think it could be used for for instance a youth group, s'mores or something of that. I don't think it'll be in use a lot. It's more like I said, kind of just a nice touch and feature to add to the pavilion area.
So is it a wood-burning fireplace?
Yes, ma'am, it is wood.
I was just curious where they're going to be stacking the firewood. Because I want to make sure you're not going to be able to see it from,
I don't think.
Or a big, huge stack of firewood sitting out there on Mount Vernon and Glen Ridge.
I think we can commit to not having it stacked in view of the public roadways. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any other discussion? Mr. Baumann.
Stan, can you put the image, the rendering of that back up there? Caroline? So, is this considered a front yard or a side yard? I mean, it's a corner lot, but it's. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think technically, Glen Ridge was considered the. I'll let Ms. McIntosh.
You can stick around.
So the church entrance is on Glen Ridge Drive, but that is considered the side street, and Mount Vernon is the primary.
I guess with a big gathering at the intersection of two major roads, is there any necessity for required screening from a to the councilwoman's point, from an aesthetic standpoint and also from a public safety standpoint, to have gatherings effectively at a corner of fairly busy intersection? Was there any plans for screening or enclosure of some sort that it's not required?
Yeah, there's not a requirement. There's fencing for the playground, which is further in.
Right.
But at this point, there's no requirement for a fence or some enclosure. But if there's need for additional screening, the plantings could be taller, whatever you want to add.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you all planning to do any substantive screening of
I don't believe there was anything planned, no, sir. I think, part of the purpose is to, create somewhat of an inviting space there.
Was it open to the public?
Not open to the public, but open to, someone that might want to, inquire about opportunities at that place of worship. So, and it is, the setback is 40 feet from the right of way, I believe, on that side. So it's not, it's not as close, that a car could veer off, I don't believe, and, at the speeds through that intersection and cause any problems.
Okay.
Can we require that the whole thing be fenced around?
Well, first of all, I think I'm looking at this, and I think the perspective of this, it looks much more imposing than I assume it will be because of the perspective of having this outbuilding out kind of front, that this is not necessarily, it will not necessarily be this imposing when you're driving down either road. It's going to be, how big is the structure?
It's 2,000 square feet.
It's pretty big.
So it's about 40 by 50. That might not be the exact dimensions, but roughly 40 by 50.
Okay. And how tall?
Probably an eave height of 10 feet, and then the 12 feet, eave height of 12 feet, and then the roof
This
structure.
picture makes it look a little, that it's bigger than the church. And I'm sure that it's more of a matter of perspective than actual physical size. So I think that's where the concern's coming from.
Sure.
It's just
Yes, sir.
the look of the, when the architect did it, I don't think he or she didn't think about the perspective of how this would look as an imposing
Right.
structure on the front of the church. So,
I'm not sure if we have the site plan we can pull up. That might
I would
give
be
it
reluctant to
a
start
little-
imposing things, Mayor, tonight, but I want to know more about it.
Yeah, so in this view, I think you can see the footprint of the pavilion versus the size of the main sanctuary building.
Bradley, if I can, for 1 second. I'm Mark Swain with BCA, with the architects that designed the
Right.
pavilion. Sorry, I apologize. Mark Swain, BCA, we're the architects that designed the pavilion and are working on this project. The pavilion was designed to help invite people in, to give it during COVID, when a lot of services were outside, it was noticed that having outside services, having outside events helped bring people into the church. So part of it was designed to bring people into the church and help grow the church. And I apologize for the perspective being a little bit overwhelming. We are architects and we're proud of our building, so that's on my.
34. It's a 33-foot alternative.
Yeah, because there's a requirement you have to be over the ridge line.
I don't want to misconstrue. I mean, I'm all for
No, that's-
outdoor. Just want to make sure this is our one
It is
shot to weigh in.
No, that's fine. That's fine. It is Frank Lloyd Wright chimney, where there's a lot of emphasis on the chimney and the hearth of the chimney and size of it. Is a drawing factor.
Do you need to have the fireplace out there? Or is that something that you have to have?
That was one of the requests from the church. So
Okay,
one other thing I would
okay.
like to go back, I'm sorry, for the firewood, there is storage designed into the fireplace for storage on the side a little bit so you won't see it. Sorry, I just wanted to cover that one little point.
Ms. Mueller.
So this is more of a continued question about the screening, and I think that the one thing I think that Councilman Baumann may have been alluding to, and I mean, that is a fairly busy intersection right there at the corner, and I mean, are there any thoughts of putting, I don't know, I would say cedar wood, I don't know what kind of trees or shrubbery kind of along, it might look funny, but at least then that would give the congregation a little more privacy, and then the road, there's not the distraction of what's going on over there.
That was brought up in our discussions.
Okay.
I would just suggest that you look at the landscaping to see what might be done to soften it a little bit
Okay.
and see what could be done. Anybody else? All right. Hearing no further discussion, we have a motion.
One correction.
All right.
I did hear on your motion you said 5920. It's actually 590
590.
Mount Vernon.
All right. Yeah, it's written down as 55920. So it's 520, 590. 590. Okay. Just make sure the record is accurately reflected. All right. We've got a motion to approve the conditional use permit to allow for improvements to an existing place of worship at 590 Mount Vernon Highway. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item number 2024-14. This is consideration of a reappointment to the Board of Appeals. Jason Bodwell, presented by Mayor Rusty Paul.
Yeah, we're going through the appointment period. Mr. Bodwell is an accountant who served an uncompleted term on the Board of Appeals. He has background in a lot of loan work with different kinds of development. His expertise on the Board of Appeals has proven to be very beneficial, and I'm asking you to reappoint him to a full term on the Board of Appeals. With that, I'll entertain any motions. Ms. Rochelle.
Approve agenda item 2024-014, reappointment to the Board of Appeals of Jason Broadwell.
We have a motion by Ms. Rochelle. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Ms. Rochelle, seconded by Mr. Paulson, that we reappoint to the Board of Appeals Mr. Jason Bodwell. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on the reappointment of Jason Bodwell. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item number 2024-15. This is consideration to declare a surplus certain property owned by the city and directing disposal of the same, presented by Chief Financial Officer Tony Carlisle.
Ms. Carlisle.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. This request is seeking your approval to declare certain city property as surplus. The city's fire, rec and parks, fleet, and police departments has property which is outside of the service date and no longer a valid use for the productivity of the business of the city. The exhibit is provided lists all equipment for consideration of categorizing as surplus. The purchasing policy and code of ordinance directs our purchasing team to dispose of these items under the supervision of the city manager in the most advantageous manner. Choosing to move forward allows the purchasing team to make items available for sale, donation, or disposal. Declining the request requires us to maintain a storage location for this property. Again, we're seeking approval to classify these items as surplus.
All right, you've heard the report of the Chief Financial Officer. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul,
Mr. Paulson.
I move we approve agenda item 2024-15, consideration to declare as surplus certain property owned by the city and directing disposal of same.
We have a motion by Mr. Paulson. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Mr. Paulson, seconded by Dr. Kelly, that we approve agenda item 2024-015, a declaration to surplus certain property owned by the city and directing disposal of the same. Any discussion?
Mayor Paul,
Mr. Paulson.
I didn't see any computers on. Are there any computers on this?
Yes.
Okay, and if so, there's monitors, but, so we make sure everything gets wiped clean on these things before they go out?
Yes, IT wipes everything before it goes to auction or outside of the building.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2024-015, declaring as surplus certain property items owned by the city of Sandy Springs and directing disposal of the same. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item number 2024-16, consideration to adopt an update to the sidewalk master plan network map for Sandy Springs, Georgia, presented by CIP Unit Manager Wesley Waters.
Mr. Waters.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. All right, I'm gonna move to the third slide. One more, yes. Sorry. Thank you. The reason for that is I didn't want to show it twice. But as an overview of the sidewalk network master plan, the plan defines roadways that are most suitable for pedestrian facilities. It identifies roadways that are candidates for sidewalk program funding, and also identifies roadways that would require frontage improvements for in conjunction with private development permitting. So if you could go back to the one more, all right, to this overview. With the overview, there's a prior to the date listed first there was the last major update to the sidewalk network, or to the sidewalk program, was March 15th, 2022. And at that point, a lot of sidewalk projects have moved forward with the T-SPLOS program. At that time, there was it was noticed that there were many sidewalk requests that were on streets that weren't on the master plan, and areas where it was logical for them to potentially be considered. So since there had been no update in the plan for several years, since 2016, we undertook reviewing the master plan and reviewing the additional requests, and we brought a update of the master plan to council on 8/15/23 and made a call for residents to make any more requests by October 13th, and we got good participation there, and brought it back on December 5th to a work session, and there were this same list that's in consideration tonight was presented on December 5th. There were no more additions or removals since that update. So that's in red here is tonight's date, where we're asking for this update to be considered for adoption. The plan on this sheet shows roadways that were considered and not recommended for addition to the master plan. The red is the existing master plan streets, and the blue are what's recommended for adoption as additional streets. No streets were removed this time, and the blue streets and the rest of the presentation shows, outlines the streets by district and a list, and they're also listed in the agenda item memo. So they're listed, specifically, but you can get a good picture of what's been recommended for addition with the blue lines. And the criteria, we've talked about that, what's logical to be added, and then, when there were some that were pre-screened, and then as we got into debating them through a committee, we had the safety need and demand criteria that are on the next sheet. If you can go to the next slide, please. Those, we ran through those, and if it didn't make it, it's shown on the previous map in another color than blue. So back to the last slide, the next slide. I say it's the last slide. The slides beyond it are that list of streets. So this is the blue, or what we're recommending be adopted as additions to the master plan tonight.
All right, you've heard the report of the CIP unit manager. What's the desire of council? Mr. Baumann.
I move adoption of agenda item 2024-016, request to update the sidewalk master plan.
Have a motion by Mr. Baumann. Is there a second? Moved by Mr. Baumann, seconded by Mr. Paulson, that we approve agenda item 2024-016, update to the sidewalk master plan network map for Sandy Springs. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2024-016, updating the sidewalk master plan network map for Sandy Springs. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item 2024-17, consideration to approve the Boylston-Hammond intersection streetscape grant application to the State Road and Tollway Authority for the 2024 Georgia Transportation Information Infrastructure Bank, and make a commitment of local funding match, presented by Public Works Director Marty Martin.
Mr. Martin.
Mayor and Council, good evening. Tonight, staff recommends that you we support submittal of an application to the State Road and Tollway Authority, SRTA, for the 2024 Georgia Transportation Infrastructure Bank program for the Boylston-Hammond intersection and streetscape project. SRTA periodically solicits transportation project applications for a grant and low-interest loan program. The Georgia Transportation Infrastructure Bank provides grants and loans to highly competitive transportation projects that enhance mobility and drive economic development in local communities in the state. The last GTIP project solicitation was in 2023 and awarded the majority of the funding at that time to loan and grant combination grant loan projects. The city is seeking grant and loan funding through the 2024 GTIP grant program for construction funds to be used on the Boylston-Hammond intersection project to keep the project on schedule. Now, a little bit about the project. Boylston-Hammond intersection project will realign the intersection of Boylston Drive and Hammond, as well as install sidewalk and side paths on the west side of Boylston to complete the pedestrian network between Hammond Drive and Hildebrand Drive. The project is expected to enter construction sometime this summer. The project will continue to spur economic development by creating a safer transportation environment. The intersection of Hammond and Boylston is not currently aligned, creating both operational delays and associated with those operational delays, safety issues. The proposed sidewalk and side path is part of the city's larger vision to build a walkable, bikeable community. The project has been included in a number of the city's adopted plans to include the Trail Master Plan and Transportation Master Plan. Funding for the local match and preliminary engineering and right-of-way has been programmed in the city's capital improvement project T58. Originally in T-SPLOST 2021, $2.7 million was identified for the construction phase of this project. Staff now recommends that the city consider pursuing this grant and loan to enable the possibility of shifting those T-SPLOST funds to potentially cover other T-SPLOST funding opportunities, especially in this time of heightened construction cost growth. GTIP funding is estimated to replace the currently projected T-SPLOST funding for the Boylston-Hammond intersection and streetscape project. The city has not previously identified other funding sources to cover these shortfalls. The city may choose to forego advancing this loan and grant application at this time and seek alternative funding or submit an application for a future grant opportunity. Funding gaps at the time of construction, expected to start in the summer 2024, may potentially delay project construction. Staff's prepared an estimate on the finances of this project of an overall nearly $5.5 million, $5,478,207. The city's program thus far, $3,478,270 per project out of capital improvement program. To complete the project, staff recommends an application to CERTA for a GTIP grant of $900,000 and a GTIP loan of $1.1 million, represents some 37% of the total cost of the project. The GTIP program requires a local match, which we've satisfied in the case of the budget estimates here, and gives preference to projects with significant matching funds. Again, a sizable match amount here on the part of the city. As such, staff estimates the local amount of $3.4 million, $3.47, at 63% of the total project cost. The interest rate on the 5-year loan is 2.74%. There is an additional application fee of some $250 associated with this grant and loan application as well. Mayor and Council, with that, we recommend that we pursue this GTIP grant and loan for the Boylston and Hammond intersection project.
You've heard the report of the Public Works Director. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul,
Ms. Mueller.
I move that we approve agenda item 2024-017, the approval of the Boylston-Hammond intersection and streetscape grant application to the State Road and Tollway Authority for the 2024 Georgia Transportation Infrastructure Bank and make a commitment of local funding match.
Have a motion by Ms. Mueller. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved by Ms. Mueller, seconded by Dr. Kelly, that we approve agenda item 2024-017, the Boylston-Hammond intersection and streetscape grant application to the State Road and Tollway Authority. Any discussion? Ms. Mueller.
So maybe this is more of a question for Ms. Carlisle. How does this loan work? I don't know, maybe this is a Marty question.
I can speak to how, we already have a GTIP loan, and I can speak to how that operates. It's probably similar. Right now we're paying interest only for, I think it's 33 years, a 33-year loan, so we're paying interest only right now, and the principal will come later.
Okay. And then how do we budget for that as part of our year?
We do.
Our fiscal
We
budget?
do. We have an amortization schedule that identifies how much we should pay each year, and we do include that in the budget.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Paulson.
Marty, this thing's supposed to start this summer. Are we going to know the status of this application by this summer? I hate to start the project and not get that $2 million here.
Caitlin Caitlin Shankle, our senior transportation planner, is here, who's helped me so much with, actually helped the city so much. Let me put it that way. She did the work with putting the application together.
It's June.
It's June. Okay, that's the long preamp. So we expect word in June on whether or not we get the construction loan and grant approved.
One more question.
Ms.
And then,
Mueller.
Marty, any work that we would do on this project would not have to be redone with the Hammond corridor. So we're doing this project, obviously, with that in mind.
Right, especially the portion that's funded and active now. So this is that enabling transportation efficiency, transportation operations piece just to the west of the phase that's in design to go to construction, so that we can effectively handle those 4 lanes of traffic, 2 lanes each direction, with the Hammond initial phase that we've got underway now.
Dr. Kelly.
I had a question about just 2 of the numbers that are in the memo. So the 2.7 million is specifically for the construction of the project. It's not the whole amount. The whole amount is more like the 5.4 million.
That includes right-of-way, engineering, utility relocations, et cetera.
And that's the amount that's currently, that's
Budgeted.
budgeted in the
Yes,
T plus 2. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood the difference in those numbers. Thanks.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. Questions on agenda item 2024-017, approving the Boylston-Hammond intersection and streetscape grant application to the State Road and Tollway Authority. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item 2024-18, consideration to approve the granting of underground easements to Georgia Power Company on city property located at 6201 Roswell Road. That's tax parcel ID number 17-0089-0007-0365, 260 Mount Vernon Highway, tax parcel ID number 17-0089-007 or 0007-0423, and 0 Johnson's Ferry Road, tax parcel ID number 17-0089-007-0415, and land lot 89 of the 17th District, City of Sandy Springs. This is in relation to the TS 191 Johnson's Ferry Road, Mount Vernon Highway project at Mount Vernon Highway at Roswell Road intersection improvement projects. Presented by Public Works Director Marty Martin.
Mr. Martin.
Mayor and Council, in this case, we recommend accepting or providing and improving grants for underground easements to Georgia Power Company for those parcels directly impacted by Project TS 191, the Mount Vernon Highway, Roswell Road, Johnson Ferry Road intersection improvement project, as well as the areas immediately surrounding Veterans Park. This would enable the undergrounding of aerial distribution facilities currently provided by Georgia Power into underground easements in that project site. Staff has reviewed the request for these easements and determined they are required to facilitate the undergrounding of overhead distribution lines in the area, especially with note to TS 191, the intersection project. With that, staff recommends granting the easements.
You've heard the report of the Public Works Director. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Ms. Mueller.
I move that we approve agenda item 2024-018, the approval of the granting of underground easements to Georgia Power Company on city-owned property located at 6201 Roswell Road, tax parcel number 17-0089-0007-036-5, 260 Mount Vernon Highway, tax parcel number 17-0089-0007-042-3, and 0 Johnson Ferry Road, tax parcel number 17-0089-007-041-5, inland lot 89 of the 17th District of Sandy Springs, TS 191 Johnson Ferry Road, Mount Vernon Highway at Roswell Road intersections improvement project.
A motion by Ms. Mueller. Is there a second? Been moved by Ms. Mueller, seconded by Mr. Rochelle, that we approve agenda item 2024-018, granting underground easements to Georgia Power for 3 city-owned lots along Roswell Road and Mount Vernon Highway and Johnson Ferry Road. Any discussion? Ms. Rochelle.
I have a question about the veterans part, the green boxes, I guess, or whatever structures are out there. Is that Georgia Power, and will those be buried eventually, or?
Dave, I think we've got some cubicles already installed out there, correct? And they'll stay above ground.
They will? So,
Yes, ma'am.
okay. So we'll put something, some greenery or
Screening,
some landscape.
yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So,
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2024-018, granting underground easements to Georgia Power on city-owned property along Roswell Road, Mount Vernon Highway, and Johnson Ferry. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item number 2024-19, consideration to accept an agreement to purchase fee simple right-of-way, permanent drainage easement, and temporary construction easement on property located at 335 Hammond Drive in land lot 70 of the 17th District, City of Sandy Springs. That's tax parcel ID number 170070 LL0372. This is in relation to the T00581 Boylston Drive at Hammond Drive intersection improvement streetscape project, presented by Public Works Director Marty Martin.
Mr. Martin.
Mayor, in this case, referencing back to the Boylston-Hammond intersection improvement project, progress continues on the project. Tonight, we bring forward to you a real estate agreement, in this case, acquisition of right-of-way, permanent drainage easement, and temporary construction easement necessary to construct that intersection project, in this case, at 335 Hammond Drive. The city's appraised fair market value for those right-of-way and easements required was $469,600. Note that that includes acquisition for some portion of what is now currently private driveway, so that we can convert that to public roadway needed to provide access to this corner is the southeast corner of that intersection, so that we can provide adequate public access to the property on the southwest corner, which currently accesses right into the heart of where the intersection needs to be improved. So we would change their access as well with this acquisition. The staff reached an amicable settlement with the owners in the amount of $550,400 for the acquisition of the real estate rights required to build this project. As assessed, this acquisition reflects the minimum amount of right-of-way required to completely and satisfactorily execute the intersection improvement project.
All right, you've heard the report of the Public Works Director. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Ms. Mueller.
I move that we approve agenda item 2024-019, the acceptance of an agreement to purchase fee simple right-of-way, permanent drainage easement, and temporary construction easement on property located at 335 Hammond Drive in land lot 70 of the 17th District of City of Sandy Springs, tax ID number 17-0070-LL-037-2, T0058-1, Boylston Drive at Hammond Drive intersection improvement streetscape project.
Motion by Ms. Mueller. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Mueller, seconded by Dr. Kelly, that we approve agenda item 2024-019, an agreement purchasing fee simple right-of-way, permanent drainage easement, and temporary construction easement at 335 Hammond Drive. Any discussion? Ms. Mueller.
So Marty, the cost of this, it's just for the right-of-way, it's not for the whole parcel. I mean, we paid almost this amount for entire parcels.
In this case, that entire parcel is it's the residential complex down the driveway and to the back of this driveway off of Hammond Drive here. So a fairly significant parcel and a fairly significant amount of right-of-way we're acquiring in this particular case.
And is there also a stream there?
Yes, ma'am. Primarily, not on this parcel, but to that parcel to the northeast that the city's already acquired. We acquired that parcel a few years ago, as a matter of fact.
Any other? Ms. Rochelle.
I have two questions. One, is it cost secure usually when we're given land back and then we have to fix it the way that it was? And can this property, can it be sold, or can we do anything with it after we're done with the
Especially
business?
because of the overlay of the permanent drainage easement, et cetera, I doubt it. It's got a utility that we'll need to exact from the property once we've constructed the project. the $20,000 for cost to cure. The property owner has ornamental landscaping, et cetera, within the property. This $20,000 compensates that property owner for the loss of that landscaping and their ability to replace on their property at the new boundaries once the project is
So we're
constructed.
going to be taking out some of the landscaping on the property that we're not purchasing?
Will be the property that we impact, that we take control of and impact. So both the right-of-way and the easements that would impact that landscaping, we're compensating for the relocation of that landscaping there.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2024-019, accepting agreement to purchase fee simple right-of-way, permanent drainage easement, and temporary construction easement at 335 Hammond Drive. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. Moving to reports. The legislature is in town. The governor gave his state address on Thursday. And for those of us who care about the quality of our roads, he actually had some money in there which would double the LMIG. The state's got a surplus, and so he's putting enough money into the LMIG program to allow us to significantly increase the amount of road resurfacing that we would do in the coming year if the legislature agrees to go along with his proposal. And so there's a lot of things that are in the budget. I'm going through it right now looking for other things. This was the most visible thing, that I think would have the most immediate impact on us. And so that's a major step in helping improve the quality of our roads and streets in Sandy Springs, because LMIG is a very important part of our local road resurfacing program. And having that double in size in the coming fiscal year would be a real boon to the city. Yesterday, we celebrated the longest continuous event in Sandy Springs, which was the MLK Day event that was in this room. Nice turnout. A lot of kids were here. This event has evolved through the years. It was the very first event that the city sponsored after we became a city, and has continuously operated and on the MLK Day holiday every year since. So it's something that we're very proud of. It was a great crowd. Anna Nicholas and her team always do a phenomenal job. This is much more. In the early days, we had a lot of speakers that were tied to the civil rights era. Unfortunately, many of those people are quickly disappearing. And so about 5-6 years ago, we reconfigured that event to be more hands-on, more educational, it's always been focused on the kids to a large degree. But now it's really just giving an opportunity for our kids to learn about Dr. King and his legacy and the things that he taught and that he preached about and the things that he led. And there's one thing that's clear. If you want to defeat hate in the world today, you have to start very young. Because by the time kids get older, and we're seeing this in other parts of the world, they're inculcated with the hatred at a very early age, unfortunately. And so this is one of our efforts as the city to try and reach our young people, our kids, and teach them about Dr. King and his legacy. And I'm really always proud to be here and be part of that. And I know we had Mr. Bauman and Ms. Rochelle, I know were here. Ms. Mueller was here. And others, Dr. Kelly. So it's always an important event in the life of our city, and we're just delighted that we did that. Any other? Mr. Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. The fire chief made reference to a year ago when the temperatures got down and all these pipes burst across the city. Well, guess what? We're having the same event, hopefully not as ferocious as last year's, but those that have memories that are a year old, remember what you did to keep your pipes from freezing. I suggest you implement those same tasks tonight and tomorrow night, because it's supposed to get down to 14 tonight, and I think worse tomorrow night.
I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the things that we are doing is reaching out to our homeless community and offering them a warming shelter at Heritage tonight. So if you're without heat, please let us know, and we'll arrange to get you to that facility for the night. And we don't want anybody to suffer from the cold tonight, because it's going to be a very, very bitter night. So, any further?
Mayor?
Yeah, Mr. Bauman.
Briefly, some of us were here. I don't know that we got a lot of advance notice on Saturday, but a nice program with both middle schools and both high schools. I would say there were probably a couple of hundred performers in the orchestras and choirs, and in the case of North Springs High School, dancers, and even without a whole lot of publicity, I'd say there were probably 600 or 700, probably mostly family members in attendance. Dr. Kelly was here, Jody, you were here, we were here. I don't know if anybody else was, but nice event, and the organizers, hopefully they continue this, can get the word out a little better.
Yeah, I got the notice too late for me to be able to attend, so a little bit more advance notice to help with the scheduling would be helpful. But I understand it's a very good event, and we also had the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra do their education week here. So we've got a lot of arts education going on in this facility. That was one of the goals and objectives of building this facility, and I'm glad that it's getting used for those purposes. Anybody else? All right. Ms. Carlisle, financials.
Good evening again. This is the review of the November 2023 unaudited financials. We are at 41.67% of the budget year. Revenues are at 64.66%, and expenditures are at 27.64% of the budget. We are 5 months into the fiscal year and have received 97.45% in budgeted property taxes. As of this report date, we see expenditures starting to increase in activity ranging from 20 to 70% of the budget, but the average of the total expenditures is at 28%. We did make sure the correction from October was made in this financials as of 1/8/2024. All numbers are included. This concludes the financial report for November 2023.
Any questions of the Chief Financial Officer about the unaudited financials? All right. Ms. Carlisle, thank you. Am I still correct that we do not need an executive session tonight? Mr. DiGiulio, you're recognized.
Mr. Mayor, I move adjournment.
Mr. DiGiulio moves adjournment. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Paulson. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.